Inside Story Uganda. Real source of political
whole
updates.
debate about the court-martial or the UPDF amendment bill means to politics and the law. Mwenda, as things old man, with respect, Andrew, as the whole debate now rages, who do you think at the end of the day will win or lose?
It's very likely that the way the debate is going, Uganda will lose. Uganda will lose. But let me first say three things about this debate. The technical ones. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't like to argue technical things. So let me argue the tactical, political ones. In many ways, the people who, like my grandson Nicholas has very well argued, that the military court-martial lacks due process. That in the civilian courts, you have due process. I find it's a powerful argument, but I don't know whether he understands its meaning. Even Beyogeredde, when he was arguing to be taken to a civilian court. So you're saying that civilian courts are independent of Museveni's influence. That's what I see. And therefore, we actually have judicial independence. Because if we believe, like many opposition politicians argue, that Museveni has effective personal control over the judiciary, then it does not matter whether you are charged in the court-martial or the civilian courts, because ultimately he has the final say by asking the judge to rule against you. So if we fight...
It does, Andrew. So if you saw the cheeser in the civilian court, they cannot kick you the way they were kicking him.
So to that degree, then we give him credit that he has built a judiciary or judicial institutions, the courts, that are independent of how he personally exercises power. And there is sufficient evidence to it, in the sense that at the height of the debate on Beyogeredde was able to go, when Beyogeredde was taken to court-martial, I was surprised that the Supreme Court actually decided to hear a case it had been sitting on for years and ruled in such a way that Beyogeredde was now taken out of the military court-martial. But of course, me, I have my own suspicions. I think that it could also have been Museveni's trap to call the Chief Justice and say, please, you issue that case, judge it like this, so that I create so that we give credibility to the courts. So that when he comes exactly where he has to go, he's convicted from there, then he can't claim that these courts are not independent. Because Museveni is a great strategist. He's able to look towards the end of something and where we are. It's possible that Museveni knows the provisions in this law will be thrown out by the court. So I am not interested in what are the legal issues, but what are the political motivations for him, because there is a Supreme Court ruling in Uganda stating that Parliament cannot pass a law.
It's an article in the Constitution.
It's an article in the Constitution, okay, to overturn a decision of the court. The separation of powers exactly does that. It's like the Parliament, the legislature, would be usurping the powers of the courts and undermining their powers to adjudicate disputes. Please don't think that Museveni doesn't know about this. So why does he bring it? My own suspicion is maybe he's not interested in it going through. There are many parts of the law that he wants to go through. This is a negotiating chip. So when you go there, this issue of Kaunda suits and this, you can argue the smaller things will remove, but he retains the main aim that he wants. Because when you go to negotiate, I don't know whether you've ever bought things on the street. They will come and say, we want 100,000 shillings for this. You can negotiate and buy it at 10,000. In any negotiation, you need to put many demands. There are core demands on which you don't want to compromise. You put them there, then you add another 50. You keep negotiating the things you are not even willing to have until you retain exactly your original position. So it's possible that Museveni is doing that. And I would say, I don't think that this is happening without his personal involvement. Like he has called the NRM caucus to go and panobit them to pass this law. This law is, they must create specific categories to say a civilian of this type who has committed this kind of crime or been involved in something like this should be tried to a court-martial. In that sense, I agree with the Gen Z here that actually we should not be blind to the fact that there may be a necessity for a civilian involved in particular subversive activities against the state being tried in the military court-martial. The fear, of course, should be that tonight I have come here and accused Museveni of something, the next day I'm in a court-martial.
Mwenda, do you think the opposition has put up a formidable front to oppose this law?
I think that in terms of, yes, emotional appeal, I watched Honorable Ssemujju on TV. They have spoken very well. First of all, the government, all the TV clips I've watched, the government is very shabby. So the law was presented by Bahati. The Minister of Defense was not there. No, but initially, yes. But anyway, it was just a circus I watched on television. And they wondered, if this is so important to you, why didn't you even prepare the basics for it? So the opposition made a very good case. But what I feel like the opposition misses in Uganda is that we talk over each other. I feel like the opposition has not understood where NRM is coming from and how they can structure a debate to... Let me give you an example. In the 6th, 7th Parliament, where Ssemujju and I were reporting, there are many differences, but these Kategayas, these Amanya Mushegas, the Wapakabulos, the Dansalis,
You can't
yes,
skip her.
yes, but I should tell you, yes, there was something about those politicians at that time, which when opposition members of parliament like Ben Wacha, Okule Park, yes, people like that, when they stood up to speak, I'm telling you, even among Mabos, they were keen to listen to them and integrate.
And they were
Yes.
speaking well.
Yes.
Your point
So,
is-
because of that kind of attitude, also when the Kategaya spoke, the Okule Park and Ben Watchers could listen. Hold a second.
But many things have changed.
That's true.
There were no military people keeping people in basements, teaching them when you are calling.
They were there.
It was under command.
No, I remember there was a time, we have a clip on KFM at that time, where Kategaya was defending government, he was Minister of Internal Affairs, where they had said they had taken people in jail and they were being fed on crocodiles or just being tortured by crocodiles.
Well-
So these things, by the way, Museveni's use of the security services to bully and intimidate his opponents did not begin yesterday. In fact, there were more politicians being tried for treason in the late 1980s, the Evaristo Nyanzis. Even Moses Ali, you see, was tried with treason. For they are demolished, so many. Museveni breaking up rallies. I remember Meko Kagwa in 1993 trying to organize
At the
a rally
City
at
Square.
and Museveni calling a closed session of the NRC saying, you will see dead bodies. It was a headline in the Monitor. You will see dead bodies. A rally couldn't be held. If you went there, there were helicopters hovering over the air. There were tanks and armored personnel carriers. You would think that there was a war at the City Square, now called Constitutional Square. So Museveni has not changed. He's been very consistent. When what is called Reform Agenda was formed, and later when they formed what was it called, PAFO, the Kategayas were called me to give a speech at the PAFO conference in Jinja. I found Museveni had organized hooligans like the Tantano Makuts, beaten up everybody and dismissed his own colleagues who had disagreed with him. So Museveni has been very consistent in terms of use of violence to settle political disputes. But Museveni is much more sophisticated than that. You need to see him in his different facets.
Well, thank you. I want to bring in Honorable Ssemujju. Normally, when there is a contentious and delicate subject like this bill, there is consensus from the opposition. But this time, there seems to be no consensus. Everyone is speaking in tongues. Does it tell anything about your approach
No,
to
we
things?
are united in our opposition against this bill. The motivation can vary.
No, but
we
you
all- we all-
remember-
because you see,
You remember the organization around Tojikwatako.
but it also didn't come that early. Because the stage at which we are, the bill is still before two committees of parliament, where we have colleagues. It will eventually come to parliament, maybe Tuesday, the speed at which they are processing it. Even when we are fighting against the removal of age limit, by that time, even I had some NRM people. I was in the same van with Sechko when we were being driven to Nagarama. So the opposition may not speak with the same voice on all the issues, but there are issues that will be conditioned to speak the same way because they are going to affect us the same way. You have Dr. Besigye who was in the military court. You have people from NOP who are... So we are potentially all